Okay, so in today's video I want to make you aware of an underlying pattern that is very difficult to see because it travels along with many of our modern meals. When you look at these images, you are probably thinking that the meals look very healthy. And at first glance, they really do. But what you cannot see is what has been done to the foods before they reach the plate. You cannot see how much salt ends up through the cheese, dressings, sauces, fermented foods, smoked fish and seasoning because all the vegetables and whole foods are still clearly visible on the surface. And that is exactly what makes this pattern so difficult to recognize. If you ate many of these ingredients in their real plain form, they would not necessarily be an issue. But once several salty additions come together, you can very easily end up with a tremendous sodium load without realizing it. So I have 8 meals right here, which I also post on my community tab together with a little story. These images were taken during May and June of 2024 and they show my general eating pattern at the time. I was already a few months into my experiment and had mostly stepped away from YouTube because I needed to isolate myself and observe what these meals were doing to my breakouts. Sometimes I had fewer and then suddenly I would be completely full of them again, so I was still on the fence. I wasn't aware of a fluid retention and pressure problem at all, and I also did not track the salt because I was under the illusion that salt was essential. I could not find any real connection between sodium and acne online, so I never looked at it. But I photographed my meals every day and wrote down what I used, so now I can go back and see what I had actually done. You could say it was my very unscientific 2-year self-experiment, not double-blind, but I was definitely blind to the actual pattern. I can only estimate the sodium now because I no longer have every package or remember exactly how much salt I used. But I documented what I bought and how I prepared it, so the estimates should still be pretty close. So the first image is a salad with lettuce, bell peppers, halloumi cheese and a yogurt dressing. I also added avocado oil or rapeseed oil because I wanted those healthy fats and thought they would help me absorb the nutrients better. Then I added one of those expensive vinegars like raspberry, quince or of course the beloved apple cider vinegar and seasoned everything well with table salt and pepper. So when you first look at it, it seems completely decent. You see all the leaves and vegetables and think, well yeah, that is obviously healthy. But no, because what I completely missed was the halloumi. Around 100 grams can already contain roughly 1,200 milligrams of sodium. And once the salted dressing and extra table salt were added, the complete meal probably landed somewhere around 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams. Which is insane, but I could not see it because all the leaves and vegetables were surrounding the cheese. And no, the vitamins, healthy fats, fiber and potassium were not cancelling out that tremendous sodium load. It was simply too much. Then the second meal contains boiled potatoes, salad, carrots for the beta-carotene and once again cheese. I usually chose goat's or sheep's milk cheese because I had fallen into the whole A1 versus A2 casein discussion and thought the more expensive version had to be gentler. So while I was focused on the type of casein, I completely missed the salty cheese, the dressing and all the salt added to the carrots and potatoes. The cheese alone probably contributed around 600 to 800 milligrams of sodium. And once everything else was included, the complete meal likely landed around 1,200 to 1,700 milligrams. Again, it looked colorful and healthy, but what I had actually created was not a very sodium-heavy meal. The third meal could also have been great because it was basically potato salad with dressing and tomatoes. But then, yeah, well, I added grated cheese again because, you know, apparently no meal is complete without protein. So the major sodium sources were the cheese, the dressing and the salted potatoes, which probably brought the complete meal to around 850 to 1,300 milligrams. This one was not as extreme as the first two, but once again it looked much better than what it actually was delivering. Then the fourth meal contains lamb, carrots, potatoes with herbs, and a huge portion of fermented cabbage. This could have been a good meal, but I thought more fiber was missing and wanted to give my microbiome something to work with, so I added kimchi. The problem is that commercial kimchi can be extremely salty, and just look at that portion. The kimchi alone could easily have added around 600 to 1300 milligrams of sodium. And once I salted the meat, potatoes and carrots as well, the complete meal probably reached around 1200 to 1900 milligrams of sodium. So I thought I was adding fiber, fermented vegetables and beneficial bacteria, but what I was also adding was a tremendous amount of salt. For the fifth meal, I wanted seafood, so I chose wild-caught prawns, because I thought the farmed versions were full of antibiotics. And since antibiotics are not exactly great for the gut, I tried to avoid them. Then I added vegetables and a piece of white bread to dip into the salty garlic sauce. So again, I believed I was making the cleaner choice, but packaged cooked prawns often already contain added salt. The prawns here could have contributed to around 700 milligrams before I added anything else. And once the bread, garlic sauce and seasoning were included, the complete meal probably contained around 1300 to 1800 milligrams. So while I was looking at wild-caught seafood and vegetables, I had simply created another sodium bomb. The sixth meal was probably the best one here because it contained fish, potatoes, salad with dressing and a small serving of natto. But the portion was small, so the complete meal probably contained around 600 to 900 milligrams of sodium. And I think you can really see the difference here because this plate was simply less manipulated, with fewer concentrated salty products stacked together. It was actually a pretty decent meal, which was more of an exception for me at that time. Then the seventh meal contains lamb, potatoes, vegetables, a packaged creamy sauce with fresh mushrooms, and kimchi on the side. Well, that packaged sauce was basically a sodium-heavy shortcut to get more flavor. And together with the salted potatoes, seasoning and kimchi, the complete meal probably contained around 1000 to 1600 milligrams of sodium. I remember not tolerating the kimchi well and blaming the chili, because chili still sends me straight to the toilet today. But while I was thinking about the chili, mushrooms, fiber and my microbiome, I still did not see the salt coming from the sauce, kimchi and seasoning. And that is really the tricky part when you assemble meals the way the food industry has taught most of us to. You focus on the individual health claims attached to each ingredient, but you stop seeing what the complete meal is actually delivering. And then we have the meal I genuinely thought must be super healthy, because what are we always told to eat? Omega-3. The body cannot produce some of these fatty acids, so apparently you need to keep adding them or you become unhealthy or something, like the usual fear-mongering marketing dressed up as a nutritional language. It starts with eat them occasionally and somehow turns into eat them every day or you will become ill and die. So I added mackerel. But because I could not get fresh mackerel where I lived, I bought the smoked version. And this is where the original food had basically become something completely different. A normal smoked mackerel fillet can already contain around 650 to 730 milligrams of sodium. And once I added the salted potatoes and vegetables, the complete meal probably reached around 1200 to 1600 milligrams. I remember always feeling dizzy after eating it and thinking it was the smoke or perhaps too much of the healthy fat. But what I was not seeing was the huge amount of salt coming along with the fish. So the smoked mackerel, anchovies and sardines many of you buy can basically be like a salt stick with an omega-3 health claim attached to it. Fresh fish is completely different from the smoked, canned, salted or preserved version. So you really need to look at what has been done to it. And that is what I really want to share with you to make you aware of these meals. They contained plenty of whole foods, but what I did to those foods turned them into something completely different. It was almost like creating a fast food version of a healthy meal. You could argue, well, at least the ingredients are still whole foods. And yes, they are. But once you add like too much salt through dressings, sauces, cheese, seasoning, table salt, smoked fish and fermented products, the complete meal is probably not that different after all. And because you fall for the individual health claims, you continue thinking about these foods as though they were still simply the original whole foods. Because that is exactly what happened to me. I saw beta-carotene, omega-3, calcium, protein, fiber, healthy fats, probiotics and beneficial bacteria. But I did not see the sodium. I could not see this pattern for more than 2 years. I genuinely believed I was doing everything correctly while my sodium intake remained incredibly high. And in my own experience, this was the pattern that kept causing my breakouts and digestive issues all along. So do not only look at the health claim attached to the food, look at what has actually been done to it. Keep buying fresh whole foods, but try not to change them too much with salty sauces, dressings and all the little additions that can quietly turn a simple meal into a fast food version of itself. Now I hope this made you a little bit more aware of that. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next one. Bye!